Madwa, Panua Yerushalayim, stand face Jerusalem. Prayer for the feast of Purim. Barakatah Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai Asherah Nathan Lanawe Hag Pawarium Bashalawam the water Aman. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the feast of Purim and peace. Thank you, so be it. Tha'alim Ma'ar Sharai Machad, Psalm 221. Gabar, read everything, Baba Shai. Anya Rayam Mayam Yimya Oh Hariam Mayan Yabawa Zarya Yabawa Mayahawa Shai Shai Shemayim Warataza La Yanathan Lamawat Regalia Yala Yanawam Shashwamarka Hana La Yanawam Wala Yashan Shashwamar Yashvel Yahweh Shemaria Yahweh Tazalia Ayub Yim Yawamam Hashamash La Hakaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashemaria Mako Ra Yashemar Na Pasha Yahweh Yashemar Habalakya Wabaaya My Tha Wa Aid I Willam Basham Yahweh Shai Thawada Aman.
The book of Psalms 121. I will lift up my eyes into the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth, and even forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Shema Yasharella, hear, O Israel, Deuteronomy 6 and 4. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6 and verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And thou shalt love the
That's
Lord.
it.
Amen.
Sapla Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer, which is Matthew 6 and 9. Abinawa Shabbat Shemayim Kodash Hayya Shamke Yahweh Malakwat Kab Saba'a Ratazawan Kab Hayya Aisha Barataza Kab Shemayim Nathan Lanawa Lakham Yawam Zad Wasalak Lanawa Kabawat Nawa Kasalak Nawa Kabawat Yanawa Wala Abiyarnawa O Messiah one above our Shinawa Murakaya Laka Hamalakwa Wa Allah wa Thaparat Wa Walam Man.
Deuteronomy 6 and 7, the Lord's Prayer.
That's Matthew.
I'm sorry, Matthew 6 and 9, the Lord's Prayer. After this manner, therefore, pray ye. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Amen. Ha'ai Shramatazawath, the Ten Commandments. La'ab, Yahaya, Lakab, Alahayim, Akarim, Alapanyat, La'ab, Thaishad, Lakab, Pasol, Wala'ab, Thaibadam, La'ab, Talakwaka, Shamwa, Yahawah, Alahayaka, Lashawat, Zakat, Af, Ayawam, Hashabath, Lakwadashwad, Kabad, Abiyaka, Wa Amaka, La'ab, Daratazak, La'ab, Tana'ab, La'ab, Taganab, La'ab, Thainad, Shakur, La'ab, Tachmad, Ko, Asherat, Lara'eka, Aman.
The Ten Commandments. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord, thy God, am a jealous God. You want me to open that?
You can keep reading. Someone else can get it.
Visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the Sabbath day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen.
Amen. Yeshua, be seated. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nanah, Par Yagapan, Tuwada Aman, La Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai, Af, Yasher Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Amadwa, Panwa Yerushalayim, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakatah Yahweh, Agado, Rakawam, Abiyar, Wanawa'e, Aliyawan, Malak, Shal, Shamayim, Waratiza, Wako, Dabarim, Kayayam, Wagam, Hamashiach, Mayahawe, Arawanawe, Ahabnawe, Apala, Yawaitiza, Yahawisha, Zakarnawe, Yahawe, Bartazawan, Ainka, Yasha'ala, Zarnawe, Bana, what's up? Yasha'ala, oh, Nanawe, Yum Yum, Aitha, Kayawamyam, Makudam, Babakusha, Shalak, Mike Allah, what as what that? Alahayim, La, Maganawa, Raparnawa, Washamar, Alnawa, by Shalak, Haruka, Shao, Yahweh, Lanawa, Lala Madnawa, Rabiam, Kakama, Thabawanda, what I show the barker Basham Yahusha the water them yet why willam man. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, and wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember, Yahweh, favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, Most High, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the Spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh. In the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the law. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Nathan Lanawa, HaThawarat. Blessed are you, Yahweh. In the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us light to see. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Nathan Lanawa, Awar, Lara Awat. Blessed are you, Yahweh. In the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Nathan Lanawa, Karan, Hayo, Lakorat, Ha'ain, Yishabwa. Please be seated. Okay, so Shalom Yasharala. So Shalom everybody that's here in Philly. Shalom everybody watching us on live stream, and Shalom everyone listening in on teleconference. Welcome to Ha Yasharala Kanas, or the Congregation of Israel, where we teach that the descendants of slaves, as well as the indigenous peoples found mainly in North Central South America and the Caribbean, make up the southern and northern kingdoms of the 12 tribes of Israel, and that we fall into a lower state as a people, politically, economically, even religiously, because we broke the laws of God, found the Bible given to us by Moses, and that we come at this lower state that we fall into as a people by turning back to these commandments we broke, by following Jesus Christ as our example, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. We know famously said in St. John 14 and 15, the gospel according to St. John 14 and 15, if you love me, keep my commandments. And the high holy days that were given in the scriptures are part of those commandments that we were given to keep, to follow that righteous example. As Christ did, so we do. That's why you'll see examples of Christ keeping the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. You'll see Christ keeping the Feast of Tabernacles. You'll see Christ keeping the Feast of Dedication, etc., as well as other holy days. So we come together tonight to keep a special holy day that comes towards the end of our year, which is the Feast of Purim, right? To make note of that day, the Feast of Purim, which we touched on a little bit last night when we read about the Day of Judas, where even in that record, that history taking place after this history we're about to read about right now, it tells you that it was the day before Mordecai's Day, which Mordecai's Day at the end of Second Maccabees 14 is talking about the Feast of Purim we're about to read about in the book of Esther. Not only the book of Esther in the 66 books, but also the book of Esther, or the parts of the book of Esther that are found in the Apocrypha. This particular King James I'm reading from is the 1611 edition, where the Apocrypha is inside. But you also have King James version of Apocryphas you can get that are separate, that look something like this, where you can find the parts of Esther that aren't there. But you'll see within those texts, there's a guide that'll show you which ones to read first and in what sequential order, which I'll post in the chat so you guys can follow along easier. And I'll make sure to put it in the description of the video as well, so that anytime someone may go back to this video to see what we read, to see the sequence, they can look in the description and see what we read first. So first off, since it's a 2-day feast, we're going to break it up into 2 sections. We'll read the first section tonight, and then we'll read the second section tomorrow night, Most High's will, as we observe the 2 days of the Feast of Purim. All right, so my name is Nabiaz Rabal. I have the distinct pleasure of guiding you through the service this evening, going through Purim. Just write down for your notes, according to the Gregorian calendar, it's March 4th, 2023 on your notes. But then also write according to our calendar, the Hebrew calendar, which is a solar lunar calendar, right? Since we utilize both when it comes to holy days, feasts, and seasons. Today would be the 12th month and the 14th day. Once again, the 12th month and the 14th day. Oh, almost forgot to switch the banner. Salakia. So this is what it looks like in the Hebrew. So you see here, you have Ashar, right? That's the first word, Ashar. Then we have Chag, which just means feast. So happy feast. And then we have Pawar Yom, which is how you say Purim in the ancient Hebrew, right? Or if we're going to read, not tonight, but tomorrow night, where we actually will name the feast, and it'll say it comes from the root word per, or in the Hebrew Pawar, which means lot. So we're going to get into lots and what the significance is behind lots and why they were cast, and what significance is to why we keep this day and why we remember it. So that's what that means when you see that. So Shar Chag Pawar. Okay, so let's begin. So we'll pull some links here and there, but it won't be as many. This reading is more like a story as we go through it. You just want to kind of take a journey with us as we go through the scriptures and try to visualize what's happening as we read the story, and we kind of go back and forth between Esther that's in the scriptures, well, I just say in what we call the 66 books, most King James versions, Bibles, and Esther that's in the Apocrypha. So we're going to start in Esther that's in the Apocrypha. And we're going to go to chapter 11. We're going to start at verse 2. So Esther chapter 11 and verse 2. And we're going to read down to 12. I'll post this right here. And I'll put a next to the ones that are in the Apocrypha, so you guys know. Or you know what, just so that people aren't confused. I'll just abbreviate Apocrypha by APOC. I'll just write it here. So Esther 11 and 2 down to 12. So that's where we're going now. All right, I'll put it in both places just so that yeah, do it like that. We'll do it in both places. Okay, so this is Esther in the Apocrypha, chapter 11 and verse 2. And it reads, in the second year of the reign of Artaxerxes the Great. You'll see it sometimes spelled Ahasuerus when we go to the 66 books, but referring to that same line of kings, because there was more than one of these that came out of the Persian Empire. It says, in the first day of the month, Nisan, so So that was an old name for the first month. We had a name for it, Abib or Abiyab in the ancient Hebrew, which means in the ear. But you also see the first month being referred to as Nisan. It says Mordecai, the son of Jairus, the son of Semei, the son of Kisei of the tribe of Benjamin, had a dream. So now reading about this man Mordecai, who's going to be very important and central to the story we read tonight. But it says that he had a dream. Verse 3, who was a Jew and dwelt in the city of Susa, a great man being a servitor in the king's court. So he says he was a Jew, right? So showing that Benjamin, or the tribe of Benjamin, is one of the 12 tribes of Israel, right? Even though that title Jew would be based on Judah or Judea, referring to the southern kingdom, which would be there in the land longer than the northern kingdom. That's where that term would come from. It would be like a shortened version of someone who came from Judea or Judah, which was the southern kingdom, which mainly had the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi there. And I'll just share this real quick, just so you guys can kind of see what we're dealing with now as far as empires go. You know, I always like to reference the Bible Atlas, at least one that's available online that's free, that folks can easily access. But this is, I think, the 84th one, since you'll find different pages in here, each dealing with different times in history. Like we'll show them sometimes when we go into Maccabees, or show them as we're going into Samuel. But here's one we could look at that pertains to the Persian Empire, who's a dominant empire right now, which was like during the time of the 5th century BC. Right, as you can see, they had a lot going on. Right, if I zoom out a bit, you can see, and there's a square here at the bottom. You can see all the things that they had rule over. But now, this is number 84 out of this Bible Atlas by Access Foundation. You look it up online, right? Now, if I zoom in towards the middle, you look at this empire. You see it goes as far east as Macedonia, showing you that they had dominion over the Greeks before they took over them later. But it goes always far east as Hindush, which is what the British call India today, and what they call Hindustan, right? Elam going far and far into the east. But these yellow dots you see when you look on the map, they represent, as it says here, major Persian administrative centers. But let's zoom in, because we see the city Susa being mentioned. So if I zoom in and scroll right to about the middle here, let me go up a little bit, might be hard to see, where you see Elam towards the middle of the screen. This is the city that we're reading about here, that most of these events are going to take place that we're reading about, the city Susa.
So yeah, 12 provinces, something like that?
Actually more than that.
112?
Actually more than that. This city Susa, situated pretty much northeast of what we now call the Arabian Peninsula, right above the Persian Gulf. But that's where this city is at, just so you have an idea of where everything is. And of course, this land is where Israel is on this side. And we have Egypt and everything else on this side. So this city that's here in the middle, Susa, that's where this is at, so that we have an idea of what we're looking at here. And all that time, you guys weren't even seeing what I was saying. Sorry about that. So now that I'm sharing, apologies. You look towards the middle where you see the bubble where it says site where Darius began. To the left of that, where you see Elam, you'll see this yellow dot, which represents the city of Susa. Right above the Persian Gulf, where the river of Euphrates comes up, and to the east of that. Susa is right in the middle of this map, as you guys can see. And this is map 84 of this Bible Atlas by Access Foundation that you can Google online. It's free. So that's where we're at. And this is where Benjamin, Mordecai, so the tribe of Benjamin, is having this dream. So let's get back to it. So this is the dream he's having. It says in verse 5, once again, I'm in Esther chapter, in the Apocrypha, chapter 11 and verse 5 now. Behold, a noise of a tumult, which just means commotion, with thunder. It says, in earthquakes and uproar in the lands. He's having a dream of all these things happening, right? Earthquakes, thunder, and uproar, right? So it says in verse 6, and behold, two great dragons came forth ready to fight, and their cry was great. 7, and at their cry all nations were prepared to battle, that they might fight against the righteous people. He's having this vision of these two great dragons coming against each other. And it says, there was a cry that, of all nations that were heard in this dream, that they might fight against the righteous people. So a very vivid dream, right? A dream that has a very lucid seems, right? Just try to imagine this, right? It says, in lo, a day of darkness and obscurity, tribulation, anguish, affliction, and great uproar upon the earth. It says in verse 9, and the whole righteous nation was troubled, fearing their own evils, and were ready to perish. So these righteous people and this righteous nation, as we're going to read, is talking about us, Israel. But this dream is supposed to be a foreshadowing of events that are to come, that haven't happened yet. So these are things that will make sense as we go through the story. 10, then they cried unto God, and upon their cry, as it were from a little fountain, was made a great flood, even much water. So this righteous nation, these righteous people, says they cried unto God in his dream that Mordecai is having. And it says, as it were found from a little fountain was made a great flood, even much water. So you have like a small little fountain, and in the dream it spreads out into many waters. Then it says in verse 11, the light and the sun rose up, and the lowly were exalted and devoured the glorious. So then we have this image of the light and the sun rising up as well in this dream. And look at what it says there too. The lowly being exalted, and it says, and devoured the glorious. So those that were in glorious position, they're being devoured by those who are lowly. So you kind of have like an underdog pretty much taking on, a stronger foe or an adversary in this dream. Once again, all these things are significant to the events that are to come as you remember these days of Purim. 12. Now, when Mordecai, who had seen this dream and what God or power had determined to do, was awake, he bare this dream in mind, and until night, by all means, was desirous to know it. Right? So imagine having a dream as vivid as that, saying to yourself, wow, what a dream. What was that about? Right? I know sometimes we may have had dreams that we may not be able to make sense of, but something as vivid as that, that's going to leave one, that's going to be one to remember, especially if you can recall it and recall the details of it, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but usually if I have a dream, usually it's just a mundane dream of something that I would normally do or normally go through, I'll forget it. I'll wake up in the morning, I might remember it was weird, but I might not be able to put all the pieces together in my own head as far as, what the details of it were. But let me just read these verses real quick as it pertains to dreams, because we were talking about this in the class, and we'll go into it in again and revisit it, because I know it's one of the questions that some of the new folks that have been dialing in have had questions about. Here's just some good things to know when it comes to dreams. I'll touch on them now. Let's get this in Ecclesiasticus first. Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha. Ecclesiasticus. I'm going to go to verse 34. I'm going to read from 1 down to 7. So Ecclesiasticus 34, verse 1 to 7. Before I read my next section of Esther. So Ecclesiasticus 34 and 1, it reads, the hopes of a man void of understanding are vain, which just means worthless, and false. It says, and dreams lift up fools, right? So dreams lift up fools, dreams in general. But as I read on, we're going to get context behind the dreams that we're talking about that lift up fools. and whether or not this should be compared to the dream that Mordecai had. Verse 2, whoso regardeth dreams is like him that catcheth at a shadow and followeth after the wind. Right? So picture that, trying to catch a shadow or follow after the wind. Right? It's difficult to do. It's like transient. You're trying to hold on to it, but you can't grasp it. Right? And the more you move, the more it goes away. Right? Like, chasing the wind or chasing even something blowing in the wind could be difficult enough, let alone the wind. It says in verse 3, the vision of dreams is the resemblance of one thing to another, even as the likeness of a face to a face. Right? So it's like looking into a pond or water, or looking into a mirror, right? Or looking at somebody who may look like you, right? It says in verse 4, of an unclean thing, what can be cleansed? And from that thing which is false, what truth can come? So it's posing a rhetorical question, right? If something is unclean, right? If it's not something that you can deal with, how can that thing be cleansed, right? If it's already unclean by its nature. Same as with something that's false, what truth can come from that, right? That's why anytime you deal with folks and they have certain doctrines, you want to know, where's this doctrine come from? Where does this understanding or viewpoint come from? What's it based on? How do you prove what it is that you believe, right? Is it based on truth or is it based on falsehood? So all these things being compared to dreams, when we talk about dreams and how dreams move people. Verse 5, divinations and soothsayings in dreams are vain. Right? So now we have not only dreams mentioned here, but soothsayings and divinations, which is, occult practices on the left-hand side, doing things the Most High said we shouldn't in order to determine future events. Right? Like I said, during the week, we're probably go into that in the class. So that's something that we have on our to go over next, as that was a question in more detail. It says, and the heart fancieth as a woman's heart in travail. So we know in the scriptures, the heart also represents the mind as far as the seat of the thoughts, as well as feelings. This is a fancy as a woman's heart in travail, like a woman that's in distress, right? So that's what a dream is like. It says in verse 6, here's the key. If they be not sent from the Most High in thy visitation, set not thine heart upon them. So that's the difference. So in the case with Mordecai, his dream was sent from the Most High because it's a prophecy, the vision he was shown. And we know that because we're going to read about all the events that were in his dream are going to come to pass. But in the case of just any dream you may have, on any off day, it says if they be not sent from the Most High in thy visitation, set not thy heart upon them. Finally, in verse 7, for dreams have deceived many, and they have failed that put their trust in them. You see? And there's a question about if you may have a dream, because I know we talked about that too in the class, as far as whether it be yourself or family or friends that may have certain gifts. I know you might have this gift yourself. You might have family have gifts when they talk about things like premonitions. People might have a dream about somebody or something, and then a couple of days later something happens pertaining to that dream, right? We're not denying that you may have those kind of things, that kind of insight or gift. But if you have a question about whether or not it came from God, whether it's just something you just are thinking about, or something that comes to you that you see, if there's a question about whether or not it came from God, more than likely it didn't come from the Most High, right? It's just maybe your own gift at work, or it may just be you dreaming about what you're occupied with, which is most dreams, right? And there's other scriptures that go into that. That's where you get the whole idea of what they talk about counting sheep. And they say that I'm going to go count some sheep, right? The whole idea comes from that, from a person, that obviously works with who's like a shepherd, works with sheep. You're going to dream about the thing that you do all day long, right? That's why, especially if you've ever been during a time when you are working a lot on a job, right? Whether it be for yourself or for others, you'll dream about your work. You'll be dreaming about things you're worried about at work, things you're trying to fix, problems you're trying to solve, or quotas you're trying to meet. And you wake up and you go, oh man, I dreamed about work. I got to wake up and go to work, right? So that's usually what dreams tend to be. Or if you always work on the stock exchange, you might have dreams about ticker symbols going back and forth, right? You wake up and you go, oh, it's not 9 o'clock yet. The bell didn't start yet. So you dream about what you do. So these are things you shouldn't set your heart on. But if the Most High is coming to you in a dream, you'll know. It's like we see here with Mordecai. With that out the way, let's not go to Esther and the Apocrypha. Now we're going to go to chapter 1 and 1. And I'm going to read down to 2 and 23. But I'll post it here in the chat and also post it in the scrolling marquee too. So now we're going to Esther chapter 1 and 1. I'm going to read to chapter 2 and verse 23. I know some Bibles, like the Bible that you might write in that you have, at least in the one that I have, I wrote these in there just to have. I wrote them in the I wrote them in my Bible. So anytime I read this outside the holy day, I know which order to go in, so that I can remember. So it's in the scrolling marquee, and now it's in the chat as well. So now let's go to Esther. In the 66 books, let's read chapter 1 and verse 1. That being the last book of what they call the wisdom books, right before Job. It's hard to find. Usually folks will say it's hard to find books like Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. They're kind of in the cut, as they say. So Esther chapter 1 and verse 1 starts off, now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, that is, Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 107 provinces. That was what you were asking earlier. How many there were total? And that was the map we were looking at earlier, right? You look at it in its entirety. You can see how far it goes as far as Egypt in the east, Ethiopia being right underneath. And you've got India all the way over there on the right side, what they call the Indus Valley, which is a name that Esau gave it much later. You can see how wide this empire is. It says that in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was at Shushan, the palace, it's spelled a little different here, but that was the same as Susa we saw on the map right there in the middle when we looked at it before. In verse 3, it says, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media. Because remember, it was a dual empire, right, when you read about it. See, the Persians and the Medes that ruled in conjunction one with another, right? It says, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him. Verse 4, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days, right? So that's 180 days, right? That's quite some time, right? That's a long feast. Just thinking about even how we tell time now, right? We know 30 days is about a month, right? So what's 180 days? That's like, what, half a year, 6 months, at least according to the Gregorian calendar. It says, and when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan, the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. So a week-long feast was made during this festival, if you will, this extended feast or festival. It says in verse 6, where were white, green, and blue hangings, fastened with cords of fine linen and purple, to silver rings, and pillars of marble. The beds were of gold and silver upon a pavement of red and blue, and white and black marble, right? So all types of tapestries and fabrics and all types of decorations. being set up here in this empire, right? So it was a great festivity that was going on here. And they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance, according to the state of the king, right? So all different types of golden vessels as well as royal wine, right? So the top vintage, right, being here at this feast, this festival. It says, and the drinking was according to the law, none did compel, for the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure, right? So it was like a buffet, if you will, right? But for, drink in this case. So hopefully, you know, those officers could contain themselves, right? They didn't want to embarrass themselves. Even they could drink, they were high positions. They want to be they made a laughing stock, right? But these aren't. This isn't the righteous kingdom, so it's tough to say how that might have turned out, right? Now, reading on in verse 9, it says, also Vashti the queen made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to King Ahasuerus, right? So his queen even had a special feast for the women that they could attend to, right? That they could congregate amongst themselves as well, right? That were part of the the ruling class and the cabinet of that time. Now it says in verse 10, on the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Memucan. You guys have Memucan or Mehuman? How's it spelled in yours? I'm reading from the Old English.
Mehuman.
Okay, it's the same for me. Commanded Mehuman, Bistha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zather, and Carcass, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king. I'm just reading names as far as the way they look. It says in verse 11, none of the names seem strange because they're coming from a different language, right? They're being translated into English from a foreign language. Sometimes we read names of strange nations, even our own names. We'll have trouble with it, right? Especially when we first start reading the scriptures. It's like, ooh, help me out with this one, That's just it. We're dealing with another tongue, right? Speaking the tongue of the other nation that conquered us, right? Whether it's the English, the French, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Dutch, right? Whatever language that our oppressor put on us, as opposed to our original tongue. Verse 11, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal to show the people and the princess her beauty, for she was fair to look upon. So he brought Vashti as queen, right? It says with the crown royal. So they make a little joke, right? This is the actual crown, right? Not like the famous alcoholic beverage that we know is near and dear to Judah, right? It's like a pastime, You ask any Judite, you go into the special cabinet, they always have, if not the bottle, they got the bag. They hold on to that bag, right? You always got at least one, right? Good old Crown Royale bag, right? At least we see where the name came from. All right, reading on. So verse 12, but the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. So he summoned her to come, but she did not hearken to his summoning, right? And it says he was angry by this, right? So what's this mean? Let's read on in verse 13 and see what now it has Ahasuerus his thoughts about this, but also his officers. This is in verse 13. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner towards all that knew law and judgment, right? So he had a cabinet, right, of different people who would come to him with different information, right, about the countryside and different affairs, right, things going on, just like we have today with governments, right, where the leader, whether it be a president or a prime minister, have his cabinet, and each one will give, the president or prime minister, the daily report. This is what's going on in the Department of Labor. This is going on in the Department of Interior, Here's what's going on with our defense, things. Here's what's going on with our agriculture, et cetera, right? So he had a similar group to help him govern, right? So it says, manner towards all that new law and judgment. It says in verse 14, and the next unto him was Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memucan. Okay, that's the one I was thinking of. I was mixing up with Mehuman. That name always sticks out. Memucan. Wasn't he in that movie we watched? Not the One Night with the King, but that other. You brought the DVD one year, right? To the class. The other Esther movie. And they had that guy. He was kind of funny in the movie. The guy who played Memucan. It says, the 7 princes of Persia. Oh, there's a Prince of Persia, right? You guys remember that? They had a video game named after that. That was popular not too long ago. Princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, in which sat the first in the kingdom. So they're there and they're seeing the king, right? Okay, thanks. It says, all right. I'm not sure why you said that right now, but okay. Which shall we do unto Queen Vashti according to the law, because she have not performed the commandment of King Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? Right? It's another question in the situation, right? Because everyone is there that's at the festival, they know what happened, right? You summoned her to come and she didn't come. So it's like a bad look. Like, why is the queen ignoring the king? What's going on? Are they having problems? Is there an issue? Yeah, exactly. Oh, and the court jesters probably saw it and it was like, oh, I have a new little song I'll write on this, So all these things that are taking place is it's word obviously gotten around, and any gossip that you had back then was starting to spread about this. So they said we have to consider what to do about the situation. 16, and Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen have not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this indeed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, when it shall be reported, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. So when you go into government in general, right, whether it was back then or now, and even as the scriptures speak on this, right, people always look to whoever's in charge and the example that they set, and the character that they come to what, and the character that they carry themselves in, right? They look to that as like the epitome or the model, right? And you see it even here in America today, right? Where you see you see Joe and Jill Biden, right, with their kids, right? And you see the dog, they say, oh, it's the president's dog. Oh, look at him, he's playing on the White House lawn. How nice. And before that, you had Donald Trump and was it Melania, right? Trump. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right. And then before them, you had Barack and Michelle, right? And it was like, oh, look at that, the president and his wife and the first lady and his 2 daughters. Oh, so people look at that and they go, oh wow, look at that, the first family. So it's like a model, for the country. And a lot of times, especially when it comes to America, it's a farce because this country is very hypocritical, right? Where they present themselves one way, but what they actually do is something else.
I remember one time, Donald Trump, when he was president at that time, he wanted to hold Melania Trump's hand, and she pulled her hand away, and it's like,
right? It was like the talk of the town. Every tabloid had something to say about it, and there's no 2 or 3 witnesses. There was no context at all. It's just everyone kind of ran, their imagination ran wild on why that was, Whether it's true or not, as far as the why, is your guess is as good as mine. But makes for good tabloids, makes for good gossip. Oh man, look at that, Donald Trump. Uh-oh, is issues. He's got issues. But as far as just that principle of the man of the ruler, so are the people, to where it doesn't matter how the ruler presents him or herself to the people. If him or her has a certain code of conduct or way about themselves, even if they keep it covered, even if they do things behind closed doors, but they present themselves as a certain way, that's going to be reflected by those that report to them, right? And by the people at large. And a scripture we can go to show that is actually in Proverbs, which I'll get right now. So this is Proverbs 29. And verse 12. So hold Esther and go to Proverbs 29 and 12. So Proverbs 29 and 12. It reads, if a ruler hearken to lies, all his servants are wicked. Right? Which is showing is that what? If the ruler of a place, if he deals with deception or deals with principles that aren't based on truth, just by default, all his servants are going to be wicked as well, because they're going to be following suit to the model of leadership that they establish, right? So that's why they're looking at this and seeing just how, how important the figure of the king and the queen are in Persia, as to the second and third order effects it's going to have in the rest of society, as far as how they themselves conduct themselves between each other. Well, remember, there's a bigger story at stake here, because this is all being set up to lead up to what we remember as Purim, and our foremother Esther being brought into play. All these things are being set up as a grander scheme to bring her into play to be a savior and a deliverer for the people of Israel, along with her uncle Mordecai, right? So that's the bigger picture that we're going to see manifest itself. But right now, we're just dealing with this particular incident, and that's going to set the stage for what comes next. So Ecclesiasticus chapter 10 and verse 2 is the other verse you can get. Ecclesiasticus chapter 10 and verse 2. Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, chapter 10 and 2, reads, I can find it, but here we go. It says, Ecclesiasticus 10 and 2, as the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers, and what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein. You see? And I always like to mention this or consider this, especially when it comes to Esau, because Esau tried to present himself one way, but what he does behind closed doors is something totally different. And regardless of the perception he tries to, manufacture and control, right, through his media, what the powers that be do behind closed doors is rearing its ugly head. And we see the debilitating effects it's had on this government, and how it's affected not only this country, but all the other countries that America has afflicted, molested, caused conflicts in their countries, set up army bases there, set up coup d'etats in these other countries, and these other things that America has been doing since it's been founded, as well as what it really believes, which is not the God of the Bible, which they try to claim that's the God they follow, but really the God of this world, Satan, and how they deal with wicked occult practices behind closed doors ever since the country was founded. Their founding fathers being key culprits, from Benjamin Franklin to George Washington to Thomas Jefferson to John Adams and the rest of them. So there's no escaping this principle. Perception alone isn't enough. Your intent has to be righteous too. But back to Esther. Let's read on. So Esther chapter 'm in verse 19. So that was a link for 1, 17, and 18. Esther chapter 1, verses 17 and 18. So Esther chapter 1 and verse 19, it reads, "If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she." So the conclusion they come up to was to have her be removed from being queen, right? But then to have royal estate be filled in by someone else. But now, who would this someone else be, right? That would replace Queen Vashti. Verse 20 says, "And when the king's decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both to great and small," right? So that was the thought process to quell that potential fire that could have been started, as far as, you know, all families, across the empire being broken up, right? Because, even now we talk about, when it comes to the family structure, if women are the backbone, who's the head, right? Will be the man, and then the children are the arms and legs, right? Hence the family body. So many families make a community, many communities make a nation, right? So if the family unit is destroyed, which we see in these times, Esau having all types of things from culture to entertainment to social media to, other things being used as tools to break that apart so he can keep the people weak. We see they understood that even then, that a strong family unit was essential to having a strong government, and how those things are all connected. So it says in 21, "And the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. For he sent letters unto all the king's provinces, and to every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. Every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people." So showing you, even though the Persians were in power, they had rule over different peoples, different tongues, different nations. So they had it translated into different languages. So it's like you see now, they have certain publications that come out when they pass new laws or new legislation, right? Even here in the modern times, you'll see a brochure in English, or you'll see it in Spanish too, right? Or you'll see it in French, right? Since those are like the popular languages you find throughout North America, right? And you can even get in other languages too, if not in hand form or even in like digital form, right? You can get it translated. So now we're in chapter 2, in verse 1. It says, "After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, Let there be fair young virgins sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the woman, unto the custody of Higi, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden which pleased the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so." So now here's the next stage, right? So first we have this Vashti not coming to be summoned. Then they passed the decree to show, we don't want this kind of scenario happening when it comes to men and women. But now they have this other idea to say, let there be a contest, right, to see who can be the next queen throughout all the land, right? So I always think, thinking of reading this now and comparing it to what we see today. It's like what we see with these different TV shows and these reality shows, like American Idol or America's Next Top Model, right? Where they'll have a talent search or a beauty search, right? Or Miss America pageant, right? Or Miss Universe pageant that goes through all the world and to see, of all the women, who's the most beautiful, both inside and out, and ask them a series of questions, and you know, we can see what happens with that, right? And then whoever wins, it's like a big occasion, right? So it's different times, but it's a similar scenario, right? But now we see the incentive why they're doing it now, because they want to see if they can find a new queen for King Ahasuerus. Once again, this is all just the stage being set to bring into the story of Esther and Mordecai as it pertains to the high holy day, which will be called Purim. We're all being led towards this. It says in verse 5 now, now in Shushan the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai. That's the same as Mordecai. It's just spelled a little different here. The son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamin. It says, who had been, okay, down, representing right here. Okay, I see it. House of Kish, represent. All right, all right. Who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, who Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away, which we read about that at the end of Jeremiah, as well as in 2 Kings, leading to the end of the kingdom of Judah at the hand of the Babylonians. Because remember, before the Medo-Persian Empire was dominant, the Babylonians were the dominant ones before them. So the Babylonians took us out around the 6th century BC. This is about a century or so after that, in the 5th century, right, time-wise. Verse 7, it says, and he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther. So Hadassah is her Hebrew name, but then she's going to be given the name Esther as well, which you go into that name Esther. It's a little more ambiguous, right? So you have certain names now where you'll hear it and you'll say, okay, if I see that name on paper, if I'm seeing a resume or something like that, or a name written down, what nationality is that name, And it's hard to tell. And with Israel being a speckled bird, for men and women, when you see us, sometimes it's hard to really pinpoint, okay, one, if we're Israel, and two, are you more Southern Kingdom or are they more Northern Kingdom, right? As far as just how certain tribes look. Because certain tribes may have a look within themselves, and you have diversity within one tribe. You'll see different shades of brown, different hair textures, different, shapes of noses and lips, right, and other phenotypes. But all is going to play to our favor when it comes to how the Most High is going to deliver us from the threat that we're going to read about that's coming up. It says, once again in verse 7, he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, which Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took her for his own daughter, right? So since she was our father and mother, he kind of adopted her as an uncle, right, given the situation. It says in verse 8, so it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace, to the custody of Hagi, that Esther was brought up also unto the king's house, to the custody of Hagi, keeper of the women. It says in verse 9, and the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens which were meet or right to be given her out of the king's house, and he preferred her and her maids to be the best unto the best place of the house of the women, right? So Esther in her righteousness, right? Because we know when we read the story about them, they were both righteous. Her and her uncle Mordecai were righteous, but now that was just you know what do you call it? The cake, where the icing was, her physical beauty. We know what sets her apart, what's really moving her forward. It's not so much just her physical beauty, but also the spirit that she had. As we're going to read about that when we see how she talks and how her uncle Mordecai talked when it comes to situations that arise in their thought process, and how it's based in righteousness. It's very reminiscent of when we read through Daniel, and how Daniel, his three friends, even though they were in a faraway land and captive to the Babylonians, it was their righteousness and their spirit and their understanding that set them apart, where that had them gain favor, even though they were in the hands of the enemy. We're going to see a similar situation with Esther and Mordecai, and how the Persians and Medes are going to deal with them, howbeit them even being Jews. So that's like a through line you'll see throughout the scriptures, how the Most High will always show that favor, no matter how bad things get for our people. For the remnant of us that follow him and that seek after his righteousness, the Most High will show that favor and that grace and bestow it upon us, as he's going to do for them. It says, verse 10, Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. So that's what I was saying earlier about, how Israel can sometimes have an ambiguous look, where you look at some of our tribes and you'll say, okay, is he so-called black? Are they so-called Hispanic? Are they so-called Arab? So-called East Indian? I can't really tell, And we'll do the whole, who's your father, right? Knowing the truth. Who's the seed of your forefather, right? To pinpoint for sure what nationality someone is, because they'll look like us. When you do the background, you go, oh damn, it's a heathen. Or you go, oh, I thought they were this tribe, but they're actually that tribe. Interesting. It's not because the parents are different tribes. So the parents may be the same tribe, but then just have a different look than you might expect, right? But you say, wow, that person is completely a Gadite. I would have thought they were Judah, but they're actually Gad, or vice versa, right? So she had a look about her where she was beautiful. You couldn't really tell exactly what tribe, what nationality she was. And this Mordecai telling not to show it, that's going to play out as well as you read the story. How it's going to work itself into the story to work in our favor in the end. It says in verse 11, and Mordecai walked every day before the court of the woman's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her, right? So Mordecai's there, right? But she's there, right? Being set up to be in this contest to be the next queen, right, of the land. So he's there like in proximity, and he's keeping an eye on her and just making sure everything is okay, right? That she's protected, she's not being harmed in any way, what have you, right? So looking after her, the best he can. So now in verse 12 it says, now when every maid's turn was come to go into the king Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of the woman, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the women. So look at this. I know we look at a season of a show, right? Like you talk about, American Idol, America's Next Top Model, where you get like a certain group of people and kind of take them through different, every episode is a different challenge and whatnot. This is like a whole year of them, eating the finest foods and, basking in the finest baths and being, anointed with the sweetest oils and herbs, right? To where now, if they were already beautiful, now their beauty is that much more enhanced, got the smell goods all the time, and, skincare, like the full spa treatment, but imagine that for like a whole year, to get them ready to see who's going to make the final cut when it comes to the queen of Persia. Yeah, from head to toe. Yeah, exactly. So this is quite something, right? It says 6 months sweet odors and with other things for the purifying of women. Verse 13. Then thus came every maiden unto the king, whatsoever she desired was given her, to go with her out of the house of the woman unto the king's house. Right? So it was like this kind of reminds me of like the pageants, like the Miss Universe type pageants, where they'll ask them a series of questions. They'll say, if you only had one thing left to do, or one thing left to have on the earth, what would it be? If you give an answer, and that's when the contestants, their true beauty comes out, as far as their inner beauty, if they do have it, which is like their wisdom, their knowledge, their insight. And then sometimes depending on their answers, you'll say, oh man, she's beautiful on the outside, but on the inside it's just like nobody's home. But that's when it'll really come forth, and you say, wow, she's this one right here, she's 360, top notch 360. And that can be a challenge, especially in a society where you're praised for superficial things, right? Things that are what's the word? Yes, things that are superficial, as opposed to having character. And for the men, it can work out a little bit differently too when it comes to you give a certain gift or talent. That could be both sexes, but with men, it might not necessarily be like beauty, but it might be like a certain talent or gift where if you have that, you might get a pass on certain things, and you not be compelled to have the fruit of the spirit, to have the commandments when it comes to your moral character. You'll get a pass on being, immoral if you have a certain gift or talent as a man, or if you're have a certain level of attractiveness as a woman. That can cause more. That can hurt more than help the person, especially when they come of age. If they've been able to get away all their life because of their looks, or because of their gifts. Because the Most High, He's all about, who you are as far as your spirit, how rich you are spiritually. That's the cake. The icing on the cake is your physical attributes, right? So this world's reverse. The cake is looked at as your physical attributes or your physical beauty, right? That's looked at as the cake, whereas the cake really is your character, your soul. But reading on in verse 14, in the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Shahashgaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name, right? So now they have another area they went to that would pretty much serve as like a waiting area, I guess, to see, after all the girls were able to present themselves, where you could make a final decision, right? Verse 15, now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her, right? So you see here, she's already got the right idea as far as not even come with something that was like so much carnal, something to bring before the king, but thinking more on the things that are intangible, things that are like, that you can't really measure, like we're talking about. Things that are truly precious as far as the Most High is concerned are not so much things that you can see and smell and taste, but things you can't see, smell, and taste. Going into someone's character, their attributes. What makes them really them, right? What really makes a person as opposed to the things that they may possess. It says, so Esther was taken into King Ahasuerus into his royal house in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign, which was the name that they gave it, as far as the 7th month. I mean, the 10th month, rather. 17, and the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti, right? So it was a wise ploy she did there by not trying to take any object, but just acknowledging that the true object was what? The Most High, his favor, which, like I said, we're going to see more of that be revealed when we see her character revealed as you read on. But just a scripture we can go to that speaks to this ideal, you can write down Proverbs. Proverbs 22 in verse 1. You can link that with what we're reading here in 2, 15 down to 17. So Proverbs 22 and 1, it reads, Proverbs 22 and 1, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. You see that? So a good name and loving favor, those things are priceless, right? You can't put a price on those things, which clearly are working in Esther's favor, as opposed to a physical object she could possibly bring to the king, as I'm sure other women did that were in this contest. So back to Esther, let's read on in verse 18. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast, and he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. Right. So now, a great celebration. There's a great celebration is being made for Esther, his final selection, right, to be the queen to replace Vashti. Right. So amongst all his princes, they're all getting different things together to prepare for her feast, her special feast. It says in 19, and when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. It says in 20, Esther had not yet showed her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him, right? So we see her love for her uncle Mordecai and her respect to trust his advice or his counsel to her before she would go into this contest uh, to become queen. So far, so good, right? As far as we asked her to do, as far as not showing that she was a Jewess, as we see when we read on the story, how this will come into play later. But at this point, it's not known. Reading on in verse 21, it says, in those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it to Esther the queen. And Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name, right? So once again, that loving favor, right? And that good name, working on Esther's behalf, and now want to see it, in this case, work on her uncle Mordecai's behalf, to where it's like what we say now, being in the right place at the right time, right? To witness a crime. We know in a lot of cases, right, it's not a good thing, depending on people committing the crime, especially if they're high profile, if they're they're bigger criminals. Like it seems like the bigger the criminal, this is like a bad thing, right? To be there to expose it, because they'll see you and go, "Oh, we got a witness. Make sure he ends up or she ends up 6 feet under." Right? They saw us doing this dirt, right? Or I know what comes to mind. For some reason now, I just thought about before my time, but the whole Watergate scandal with Richard Nixon, and we had like a brother, right, who was working security. He said, I guess at the White House, whatever building they were in, the Pentagon, wherever they were, and he did his job, right, to report them, cutting up, trying to shred all those papers, right, with that evidence, exposing them, and he ended up getting fired. It's just like brother got fired for doing his job, right? Exposing folks that were, going in the building when they should have been in there, doing stuff they shouldn't have been doing inside the building. He gets fired. So it shows you the wickedness. But now had he been dealing with the truth, he might have ended up a little differently. That story might have panned it out. So yeah, Mordecai was in the right place at the right time to expose this plot against the king's life, right? And you see here Esther delivering this witness, but she does it in Mordecai's name, so that they know who's the person that witnessed it, right? Who thwarted the situation. Just like we'll see today with people, like I mentioned, the whole brother, thwarting Mordecai. But you just see in the world, people do heroic acts, right, in the community, and might get a spot on the news, that night or that week. They'll talk about so and so who saved this person or did the right thing when no one was looking, and the situation was averted, et cetera, and they get some kind of some sort of notoriety, maybe give them like a certificate, take a picture with the mayor or something like that. So it says in verse 23, and when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore, they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in a book of the Chronicles before the king. Right. So his witness was true, and the plot was real. So his life was saved by these two guys, Bigthan and Teresh, and it was noted down in the records of the Persian Chronicles, right? Which we can actually read these now because they translated them into English and to other modern languages, I think, today, right? The Persian Chronicles. So that'd be something to check out as far as the archaeology brothers, that get into that. See if we can find that specific record if it's there, But reading on in Esther chapter 3, but before I do, I'm going to switch around again. Because I know I told you we're going to go from Esther 1:1 to Esther 2:23. But now we're going to jump to the Apocrypha real quick. We're going to go to Esther and the Apocrypha, chapter 12. And we're going to read 1 through 6, and then we're going to come back here. So let's go to Esther chapter 12 and verse 1. So let me write that here in the chat so that we're following along. I keep putting semicolons when I want colons. Why? Okay. So now this is Esther in the Apocrypha, chapter 12 and verse 1. It reads, and Mordecai took his rest in the court with Gabbatha and Tara, which is the same guys we read about in Esther chapter 2. It's just the names are spelled a little different. The two eunuchs of the king and keepers of the palace. And he heard their devices and searched out their purposes and learned that they were about to lay hands upon Artaxerxes the king. And so he certified the king of them. Then the king examined the two eunuchs, and after that they had confessed it, they were strangled, right? So we know that strangling was by hanging, right? By reading it here and also in Esther in the 66 books. And the king made a record of these things, and Mordecai also wrote thereof. So it's a record being made of this. So the king commanded Mordecai to serve in the court, and for this he rewarded him. Howbeit, Aman, the son of Amadathas, the Agagite, who was in great honor with the king, sought to molest Mordecai and his people because of the two eunuchs of the king. So now we got the dun dun dun, right? We have a mention of the nemesis of the story, right? This Ammon, son of Amadatha, the Agagite, right? It says he wanted to molest, but you know what molest doesn't always have to be sexual, right? But he wanted to molest Mordecai and his people because of these two eunuchs, giving us some implication here that he was in league with them to some certain extent, right? Doesn't say explicitly in what way, but it almost makes like an allusion to he was aware of this assassination attempt, and doesn't seem like he was against it either. But let's find out who he is and what his character is and how he's going to play into the whole story. But let's go back to Esther chapter 3 in the 66 books. And I'm going to read from verse 1 to 3 and 13. And then we're going to make another, and then we're going to jump back to the Apocrypha again. So Esther chapter 3 in verse 1 now. To verse 13. Okay. So Esther 3 and 1. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Amadatha, the Agagite, and advance him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. So that guy we just read about in the Apocrypha, right? When you go into Agag, right? Going back to Samuel, he was one of the kings of Amalek, one of the families of Esau, right? Who through the revelation of the Spirit, we attach him to today those who call themselves Jews, right? Amongst Esau, the so-called Jews, the fake Jews. Said that on YouTube. Guess we're in trouble now, right?
Right.
Guess now we're anti-Semitic, right? Which, how can you be against yourself if you're a Shemite as well? But that's not a discussion. But it's kind of interesting when you see figures in the scriptures and knowing who they are today versus who they were back then. And you'll see certain parallels when it comes to character and behavior, right? Very uncanny. When it comes to our people now and how we were back then in the scriptures, as well as the other nations and how they were back then. But let's read on. Let's see. It says in verse 2, and all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Right? So the king gave him this glory and honor, this Ammon of the Amalekites of Agag. But it says that Mordecai didn't bow or give him reverence. Now, why didn't he do that? We're going to find out as we read on why he didn't do that. But now, more importantly, is Ammon's response to Mordecai, right? Not bowing to him, right? That's going to be rather telling as we see. Verse 3, then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, why transgresseth thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai his matters would stand. For he had told them that he was a Jew. Right? So now we see the wisdom of Mordecai as far as why he told Esther, don't make it a thing. Don't reveal exactly, what your tribe is, right? But given his station, because I don't know if he was required to, but through circumstance, he revealed that he was a Jew. But you see here that it wasn't even Amen himself, but other folks that were, I guess, colleagues of them saw it and took note of it and then wanted to make a big deal and go, oh, Mordecai the Jew, you're not bound. Everyone else is bound. What about you? It wasn't like Mordecai was like, look at me, I'm not bound. No, he just didn't. He just didn't do what everyone else did. But then the other ones had to bring attention to it, right? And now they're gonna what? Go and tell. Like we see not only in the scriptures, I'm sure we've had these experiences today, right? And our work environments, whether we're business owners or work for public sector, private sector, whatever sector, right? Where we're trying to do the right thing and trying to keep our head down and do our jobs. You probably have co-workers that want to make a scene, right? When you don't say what everyone else says, it does what everyone else does when it comes to the holidays, other foolishness. So I'm sure some of us might be able to relate to a certain level when it comes to what Mordecai is going through here. Maybe not on the same level, but to a certain extent. Because it's the thing that's so timeless about the scriptures, while we might have all types of industry and technology now, the souls of men still doesn't change. Temptation doesn't change. Righteousness and wickedness remains the same, whether it's then or now. Verse 5, now when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. So now it was brought to his attention by these colleagues. Now he's seeing it, and now he's wrathful because, he's been given all his props, by the king, and everyone else is giving him credit, except for this Mordecai not bowing. And now this becomes a fixation. As he's saying, he became full of wrath. It says in verse 6, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. So check that out. So now he wanted to just come at him alone, but then it says, you know what? I want to get him, but you say he's what? He's a Jew? Oh, you know what? I don't like those Jews anyway, right? They're supposed to be God's chosen people, right? Mm-hmm. It says, wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. So now it just became magnified, right? It really should have just been an issue between him and Mordecai, right? And he wants to extend it to Mordecai and to all his people. So once again, we see this advice of Mordecai to Esther being in her benefit as well, being given the fact that it hasn't really been revealed what her nationality is, at least at this point. That she can at least, at least as far as the optics, she's not going to be caught up in this, but we know she still is because she's a Jew, and it's going to come out, eventually. But we see Mordecai knew just what could possibly happen, and we see now this thing is happening to him where Haman wants to now not only kill him, but then kill all his people. And this really just gives us some, even though it's not really said explicitly, we just read in Esther in the Apocrypha, chapter 12, about how he was kind of taken back when those two guys were captured, Bigtha and Teresh, those two eunuchs. It kind of gives you a certain implication, like, yeah, he must have some kind of dealings with them, where him and those two guys and other people are probably up to no good in the kingdom. There's like moving and they're like moving and shaking, but they're kind of like playing the game and trying to get to a position where they can actually do some harm and take over, as opposed to just trying to be productive members of the society at that time. They're trying to scheme, because we see here he's already got this thought in his head to just not only try to come against Mordecai, but to come against all of them, and he's in a position where he can actually affect this level of change. And this also is reminiscent too. Let me get this verse real quick to link with Esther 3 and 6. How we doing on time? Okay, 10:30. So this is linking up with 3 and 6. So this is in Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha. Chapter 28. In verse 10. We just read this not too long ago. I forget why, though. But Ecclesiasticus chapter 28 in verse 10, go with Esther 3 and 6. It reads, as the matter of fire is, so it burneth, and as the man's strength is, so is his wrath, and according to his riches his anger riseth, and the stronger they are which contend, the more they will be inflamed. Right? So we look at history and current events, we can see evidence of this, to where if it's just people who might be poor, right? Maybe not too many means, and they get angry about something, it may just end up being a quarrel between neighbors, or a quarrel at a local bar, right? Of like common people. But now when you have anger arise from men who are in positions of power, right? And they become wrathful, now they have all types of means at their disposal to carry out that wrath and cause a lot more damage to a lot more people, and and property even, right? And I always think of the famous war between the Trojans and the Spartans, right? With what was it, Helen of Troy and her, committing adultery with Paris, because Helen, remember, she was a Spartan married to a Spartan guy. And she went and got with Paris, who was the prince, one of the princes of Troy, and this whole philandering situation led to what? Two nations going to war with each other, right? It's really just a domestic situation between, a husband and wife and another man. But because these people were in top positions, right, in their respective kingdoms, end up taking, thousands upon thousands of men now being brought into warfare, led these two entire countries to battle each other, just as like a historical example of this principle. So now we see Haman being in a position of authority, and his wrath being against Mordecai. He said, you know what, because I'm in a position of power, I'm going to take it out not only on him, but on his entire people. Because, look at the honor and the name that I have. But now back in Esther chapter 3, let's read on to verse 7. Esther 3 and 7, it says, in the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast Pur, that is the lot. That's where we get the name Purim from, right? Or in the Hebrew, like you see here, Purim, right? Which just means lots, plural. Pur or Pur meaning a single lot. It's like a think of lots as like a chance cube, for example, like a die, throwing a die, something like that. This doesn't necessarily be a die, but that's like what a lot is, if we're not familiar. That's why they call it the lottery, right? When you play the lottery, and they have a device that does like either chance cube, where they might have balls that come down that are certain numbers, right, by chance to see who wins. So it says, Pur, that is the lot before Haman, from day to day, and from month to month to the 12th month, that is the month Adar, right? So that's another name for the month that we're in right now, 12th month. That was named that by other nations in history. They called it Adar. It says in verse 8, and Haman said to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's laws, therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer or allow them. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business to bring it into the king's treasuries. Right? So him using his power to now put together this legislation to what? Mark us for destruction, right? And we see the scheme that he's laying up, right? He's not going to tell, it's really just a personal thing between him and Mordecai, right? Him having it out for him and his people. But he's trying to set the stage to say, well, here's the reason behind it. I'm trying to protect the kingdom. So that's not really the real why behind what he's doing. But he's selling that to the king as far as the why he's doing it. He's making it seem like, I'm doing it for you, king. I'm doing it for you, King Artaxerxes, to protect the kingdom. But we know that's not really the case. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it to Amon, the son of Ammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. So because he already built this trust up with King Ahasuerus or Artaxerxes, he trusts that Haman has good intentions, right? As far as what he's trying to do to harm us or to harm our people. It says in verse 11, you see he's even going into his own coffers, right? The silver to even get it done, right? It says, and the king said to Amon, the silver is given to thee, the people also to do with them as seemeth good to thee. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded, unto the king's lieutenants and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province, according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written and sealed with the king's ring. So it's like a signet, kind of like like today we might use like what they call like a notary. You put a stamp on like a document to say, approved by the city of whatever or the state of wherever, right? It's just what the king's rings. That's the purpose the king's ring serves here, to say we approve of this law being written to now take out the Jews, and take note of the time that we're in, because that's why we're keeping this day of Purim, this 13th day of Adar, and what will take place after this, right? When the day will finally come. But that's why they were casting lots to figure out what day this will be done. It says, and the letters were sent by post unto all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, to take the spoil of them for a prey. So now we have another break here in the reading. So now from Esther 3 and 13, we're going to go to the Apocrypha again and go to Esther 13, 1 to 7. After that, we're to come back to Esther in the Bible for one more section, and that'll be it. So only got 2 more sections to go. So we're going to go to Esther in the Apocrypha 13, 1 to 7. And I'll put it here in the chat so everybody sees. Thirteen, 1 to 7. Copy. All right. Okay. So now this is Esther in the Apocrypha again. So whole Esther 3 and 13. In this 66 books, let's go to Esther in the Apocrypha, chapter 13, verse 1. Okay, here we go. So Esther 13 and 1. The copy of the letters was this. The great king Artaxerxes written these things to the princes and governors that are under him from India unto Ethiopia, in 127 provinces. After that, I became a lord over many nations and had dominion over the whole world, not lifted up with presumption of my authority, but carrying myself always with equity and mildness. I purpose to settle my subjects continually in a quiet life, and making my kingdom peaceable and open for passage to the utmost coast, to renew peace, which is desired of all men. Now, when I asked my counselors how this might be brought to pass, Amon, that excellence, that excelled rather in wisdom among us, and was approved for his constant goodwill and steadfast fidelity, and had the honor of the second place in the kingdom, declared unto us that in all the nations throughout the world there were scattered a certain malicious people that had laws contrary to all nations, and continually despised the commandments of kings, so as the uniting of our kingdoms honorably intended by us cannot go forward. Now let's take a guess. Who wrote this? I don't think the king wrote this. This sounds like somebody else, right? I'm sure this is Amen, right? Put this little fancy letter together, right? Boost himself up, right? And saying the king said, right? Yeah, look at the way what the king said about me. And then having the king say, yes, he brought us to my attention, this horrible, malicious people, these upstarts, right? These people are such a problem. I mean, we got to deal with them. And it's so ironic that it sounds very much like how they'll address our people today. You know, they call us by different things. They'll say the same thing in their, you know, meetings out in the open sometimes, and definitely meetings in private. Sometimes those meetings get exposed. Right? We hear people in high places talking behind closed doors. What are we going to do about those blacks? What are we going to do about those Hispanics? You know, oh man, these guys are a problem. We got to figure something out. You know, we got to make it like an accident. We got to turn things on upside down so that they get left holding the bag. We can't let them increase too much. They're going to be a problem. Whatever the scheme might be. Esau try to use gentler words, but that malicious intent to obliterate us is still there, right? It hasn't changed throughout the years.
But I mean, as you look at it, when you're in a position of rulership, you don't write letters. People write the letters for you, and they read it out to you, and then you approve or disapprove. No, I don't like this here. I don't like this there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much the same thing that this guy is doing there, because he's pretty much at the position of prime minister.
Mm-hmm.
Or as we would call it today. Just like when you see any president, they don't write those things.
Right.
They have people in the administration write it to them based on what they when their campaign on, or whoever their influencers that want this bill to pass or whatever. All he's gonna do is sign off on it.
Come. They call them today speech writers, spin doctors, kingmakers, even, right? I know that they were talking about that with the guy who used to write speeches, I think, for was it Obama? That guy, Axelrod. They had a couple interviews with him. He was talking about, how he was, work with Obama to try to, craft his whole image and, different campaign strategies and stuff like that. But yeah, those folks always have a job,
Yeah.
As long as you have people that want power, they always have somebody who's, in that position to craft the narrative, and to put the rhetoric forward. So reading on, it says, seeing then we understand that this people alone is continually in opposition unto all men, differing in the strange manner of their laws, and evil affected for our state, working all the mischief they can, that our kingdom may not be firmly established. Therefore have we commanded that all that are signified in writing unto you by Amen, who is ordained over the affairs which is next unto us, shall all with their wives and children be utterly destroyed by the sword of their enemies without all mercy and pity, the 14th day of the 12th month Adar of this present year, which is the time that we're in right now, right? So this is the day that was supposed to happen. That they who of old and now also are malicious may in one day with violence go into the grave, and so ever hereafter cause our affairs to be well settled and without trouble. So I'll stop there. So that's how the letter went. Let's go back to Esther in 66 books, and we're in chapter 3, and now we're in 14. And I'm going to read from Esther 3 and 14 to chapter 4 and 17, and then we'll stop for the evening. Let's go back there. Let me post it here in the comments. 3 and 14. Does it keep doing? Yes, it keeps doing semicolons. I don't want semicolons. Stop it. Copy. And then now I'm going to post it here in the banner at the bottom. All right, post that. So now we're back in Esther chapter 3 and verse 14, where it reads, "The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day." So you got that letter from, supposed to be the office of Ahasuerus, right? That's what you see, like you were saying, Kahan. It's like from the office of the president, the office of the governor, the office of the mayor, right? On the mayor's behalf, this horrible thing is now being instituted against our people at this time. The post went out, being hasted by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed, right? So, the bad news, when orders are passed up on high, they kind of know what's going on up there. But then as it dispersed amongst the people, right, they were confused, right? And it says the people, so we know it's us, but it's also other people that are there, even they're perplexed as well. Let's read on and see what happens. Chapter 4, verse 1. It reads, "When Mordecai perceived that all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes, and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry, and came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth." Remember, that's where he would be at before, checking on Esther, making sure everything was okay. So now clearly, yeah, I'm sure others were in his state as well, but thinking of Mordecai and the proximity he had to Haman, him probably being able to put the situation together as far as this law that was being written and probably who was behind it, given his situation with Haman, right? This is a horrible thing for that he did to then lead to this. It's totally unjustified act, right? Of wanting to what? Exterminate his entire people, right? Hence the clothing yourself with sackcloth, which was customary for Israel to do anytime we're in a lower state, anytime we're being afflicted, whether it was the environment through like nature itself, or being afflicted by some other nation that wanted to hurt us or cause us harm, which we see that's the case here. It says, "In every province whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes." Like I was saying, he was joined by many other Jews, right? Reading this letter and saying, "What the heck?" And just imagine that, just the sinking feeling you probably have in your heart, and you probably look at the calendar and you look, okay, today is the date, and then this is the date this is supposed to happen, and it's like you're thinking in your head, well, we only have a couple months or this many weeks or however long before we're to be killed. What are we going to do? We're going to stay and fight. We're going to leave the city. Like, my whole life is here. I got everything set up. I have a little business or what have you. I got to figure out something for myself, for my family, right? What are we going to do at this point? So just imagine, But, it's great mourning, It says in verse 4, "So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told her. Then was the queen exceeding grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, and to take away the sackcloth from him, but he received it not." So clearly she's being hit by this as well, her being a Jewess herself, right? Fearing for her people and the sake of her people, and her trying to comfort her uncle who's in sackcloth, right? Which clearly he's not going to receive it because, it's a horrible situation. And he's trying to humble himself as the rest of the Jews are before God to show this painful discomfort that we're now in, because that's what it symbolically supposed to represent. We know sackcloth or burlap was like rough on the skin, right? So it's supposed to be symbolic of the roughness of the situation that we're in. Similar to like when we eat the bitter herbs during the Passover, it's supposed to represent the bitter bondage we had to suffer in Egypt, right? That's the significance of eating the bitter herbs to remind us of that. Hence the sackcloth doing the same thing. So we have food and clothes that we will either eat or put on to kind of get us in that frame of mind for the situation. It says in verse 5, then called Esther for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains, who he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was, right? So they get the information, right? The 411 on what's going on, right? So Hatak went forth to Mordecai into the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. Right? Like I said, it's really tough for Mordecai, him being privy to the finer details behind why this law was written, right? And him now going to bring this to Esther's attention, as clearly she wasn't aware. So, we sent messages back and forth. I know, like today's time, probably would have been sackcloth. We wouldn't be on our phone, texting each other, right? It's crazy, man. What's going on? Why are you wearing sackcloth? Don't you know that the law they wrote in the thing? Whoop! If it was like happening today, it would be like over text message. But they got this guy Hatop being the one delivering messages back and forth, right? As far as what's happening. It says, so Hatop went forth to Mordecai. I read this already.
Verse 8.
Thanks. And he gave him a copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, to make request before him for her people. And Hatak came and told Esther the words of Mordecai, right? So now we kind of see, the advice that Mordecai gave Esther, perhaps coming into play now that she's in this position, being so close and so nigh to the king, to, cause, I guess, the harm to being set up against us, to turn it to help for us, to see if she can have some kind of influence on the king to get him to reverse this law, right? Because, God knows if she would reveal her nationality before this, if she would have even became the queen, maybe she would have, right? But it was just a precaution that Mordecai took to have her not tell him. It says in verse 10, again, Esther spake unto Hatak and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know, and whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days, right? So it's been what? Just about a month, right? Before she's been called in unto the king. So she's bringing this information back to Mordecai saying, wow, I hear what you're saying, but I'm in a tough spot too, because, you can't just go in there. She's pretty much saying if you just go in there, willy-nilly without being summoned, they'll kill you, right? It's been 30 days since, we've even, come into contact regularly. So, he must have been, really busy, doing this and that, along with, this crazy thing that Haman's got him putting in the legislation. And they told Mordecai Esther's words. Then Mordecai commanded to Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Right? Let's now get some more insight into not only Esther, but Mordecai's character and understanding their thought as far as the situation and how it could be alleviated. So he's just reminding her here, yeah, even though you may be high up and next to the king as a queen, don't think you'll be able to escape this wrath that's being set up against the Jews, right? Don't think that because you've got money and riches in this position, it's a great thing that you have it, but that you'll be able to escape the wrath intended against us as a people, right? Then he says, if you don't act at this time, I'm confident that the Most High will cause deliverance to come from us from another place, right? Since this is an ill will, ill intentions that are against us, but then it'll cause you and us to be destroyed, right? But he's saying, consider that you may be in this position right now, right? Queen, right? Over the whole realm, just to be that savior, that deliverer for the people, right? So either way, the Most High is going to look out for Israel, but it may be bad news for us in at the same time. But who's to say you're not in a position to, enact that change? That's pretty much what he's like getting her to consider. She hasn't considered it already in this communication here. So it's kind of like what we were talking about, I think, before during the Sabbath service with the elder, talking about how, you know, we need to be careful not to make too much of anybody, right? No matter how much they may have been blessed by the Most High, that they're just a tool or a vessel used for His will, right? And if anything, as Israelites, we always need to be mindful of the gifts we've been blessed with from Him and through His Son, that we don't take it for granted and that we just don't get beside ourselves and go, yeah, well, I got all this money or I got these skills, these talents, and heck with the rest of you guys, you can kick rocks, it's all about me. You can be most I can take you out just like that if you not, considering not just, for you not considering anything beyond yourself and your own concerns, right? And then I said Esther was doing that, but he's just making sure that, she just, took that into perspective, right? But yeah, it kind of makes you think of that when I read this here, and how the Most High can use us, whether we be, up on high or even down low, can use us as that instrument to change and to help to heal, right? Whether it be a few of us or in this case, a large mass of us that were here in the Persian captivity, and especially here in the capital city of Susa, right? Because remember, this law was passed not only for the capital city, but throughout the provinces. So this was a just think about all the Jews that were scattered throughout the Persian Empire, not just in the capital city. That once they got those letters and put on that sackcloth, were seriously concerned and worried about what to do next. So now I want to see Esther in her response to Mordecai and get a feel for her thought process, her character, just like we got one for Mordecai. It says in 4 and 15, then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Verse 16, go gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye from me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also, my maidens, will fast likewise. And so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So now we got from here, we got a great deal of insight into Esther and who she is, and how, this wasn't her thought process at all to, sell her people out and just say, it's all about me. She's clearly, thinking about the case of all her people and doesn't want to do the Most High shame, let alone, her uncle Mordecai, but doesn't want to do the people shame in that this thing that's intended against them, right? So just showing that connection still that she has with and for her people, her love for her people, and not like what you see a lot of times with our people where they get high up in the society and it's just like they kind of forget where they come from and you go, oh, that's your problem, one Negro at a time. I just have to be the lucky Negro. Sucks to be you, right? It's great to be me, right? We see Mordecai and Esther don't have that thought process, which is a good thing and something to be motivated by. And given that she's high up in society, being the queen to the king, look at how she's even putting her own life on the line to go against the law. Clearly, that you don't go before the king, right? She says you'll be put to death for that unless you're summoned. But she said, you know what? Let's do this. I see why you got the sackcloth on. I'm going to do the same thing with you. I'm going to have my maidens even do the same thing. That live in this lavish setup. I'm going to have them fast too. And then for 3 days and 3 nights, oftentimes we might fast, for a day. And we're like, oh man, David Atonement. Oh, how many more minutes till sundown, right? And as soon as David Atonement's over, yeah, right? They did that for 3 days and nights, right? In a row, right? And then she's still going to go and put her own life on the line. That, from a lot of women of our nation, let alone other nations, what they have had the courage and the faith to take a step like that, So it's really something to behold as we, read about this conversation that they're having. I'm trying to put yourself in that situation as far as, the uncertainty that they're dealing with. Like, we know the outcome because we read the story, over the years since we've been in the truth. But think about the uncertainty that they're dealing with at this time, right? Not knowing, knowing the Most High ultimately will deliver them as a people, but, even the Most High may deliver the people as a whole. Sometimes you might have those that suffer in the process, or those even may even die in the process. And them considering like, wow, we might end up dying in this process of trying to save the people as a whole. It might come to that, even though you're dying, for righteousness' sake, it's still a terrible thing to consider. And to have that uncertainty and to have to trust, right? Whereas you don't know what's going to happen. Even Mordecai that had the dream where we started, he may be able to pick apart certain parts of that dream, but him not even being, fully clear what the dream meant. Maybe that came to mind, as he's thinking about the situation, but still, you really can't see clearly, what's going to happen at the end. You have to take that risk, that calculated righteous risk and hope, for the best, but it's a tough thing to really be in when you're in a situation you don't really know what the outcome is going to be. I think I saw a hand. Okay. So yeah, man, just really something to consider. I know we're at the end of the reading for today, but I know when we pick up tomorrow night, we're going to get into, I think it's Esther's prayer picks back up in the Apocrypha. And when we get into her prayer, it's really telling as far as who she is as a woman, as a woman of Israel, and her thought process concerning, the position that she's in and how she considers it compared to the welfare of her people. Once again, all just very motivating, very inspiring, right? And like I always like to think of her and figures like her in the scriptures where we have our people who, you'll see in the scriptures will mention how they are outwardly as far as them being, having certain talents or gifts or being, goodly to look to or being comely, right? Being attractive. But then what really sets them apart, which makes them, immortal through history is not so much their outward beauty or appearance, but their inner beauty, their fruit of the spirit, their character. That's what sets them, really apart from the bunch, like her or like Judith or like David or like Moses, where, in their time, people might look at them and be like, oh, wow, look at that, such a dashing young man or such a beautiful woman. But what really sets them apart isn't so much that, it's their spiritual body as opposed to their physical, and that's why they're remembered, because Israel's had all types of beautiful folks that come throughout the times, even under the curse, we still have people that rise up amongst the heathen, even though they're wicked, and they'll say, oh wow, the most beautiful man, most sexiest man, the most beautiful woman, the top performer in this or the top athlete or what have you, right? And they're still under the curse, and the heathen is still mad at us not following God. Just how much more when we follow God, how that beauty, that talent, that ability is just magnified, double fold, triple fold, and beyond.
Right. Like when you look at it, the way the Most High set up things, right? It's as it says in Romans 15:4, things written before time was written for our learning. Like it's easy. It's easy to look at the individual that's being put in the situation and analyze the individual on the outward, right? Like you're saying. But the key is the position that they are put in, the action that they take is for those that's gonna come later and read about them. So the beauty and everything is pretty much more like a stumbling block for those who lack wisdom. Not to say the beauty is bad, but all there is there for a purpose. The Most High put it there for a specific purpose, right? Those who's gonna read it, what are you gonna get from it? You know, it's the wisdom, the action. You know, all in all, it's all go back to the Most High. It's not even about the individual, right? But the individual is pre-selected for that. If it wasn't Esther, it would be somebody else. You know, but it's not about the individual. Not to take away anything from the individual, right? But at the end of the day, it's about the Most High and his place.
Con. A perfect example of, like we always talk about, in the world today with Esau, he's usually, he has a zero-sum outlook on things. It's always left or right, up or down, either or. Whereas we come from a righteous standpoint with us, Jacob, it's usually a both and scenario, right? Where you look at certain situations, it's like, is it this or this? Like, no, it's both. It's just you have to weigh each one in a balance, right? When it comes to a situation. So yeah, it's definitely a both and, where beauty is good. Yeah, inner beauty is better, and yeah, I can't emphasize that enough. But we've come to the halfway point here. But we'll definitely go into the halfway point. We'll finish the other half when we go into the second half of Esther. But we'll make it end. But definitely feel free to read the rest. But we'll definitely go into it. We'll go into it in the proper sequence as we break the second half down. But this is definitely a nice cliffhanger to hold it on, because now we're going to see how the Most High is going to work in our favor, given the choices that Esther and Mordecai made to then have this dire strait that we're in work out to where it'll bless us, but then curse those who try to curse us, or try to harm us. Namely, this Haman, son of Amadatha, the Agagite. And we'll see he's going to get his just desserts, right? Like we were talking about the other night, it's like the heathen know, even if they, if they don't know right away, they'll find out, and it'll be revealed to them. Like, we can't really jam up these people unless they don't follow their God. But the minute they don't follow their God, that's when we can get them. So let's try to get them to say or do something to get them to compromise their moral integrity, to go against their laws, so that they'll be vulnerable. Because if not, we got no shot. I think we kind of touched on that a little bit. We were reading through Day of Judas last night, right? Where they would say, "Oh, relax. You have to take a wife. Live a regular life. Just be at ease." All the while Esau was, sitting back and just watching and waiting. He's comfortable now. He's living a life of convenience now. All right. Now it's the time we strike. We begin at nightfall. You know what I mean? When your guard is down, when you're laid up, right, relaxed, right, in a peaceful mode, you think, oh yeah, these heathen aren't so bad. Well, they're the wicked, but okay, they haven't given me any problems, all right, another night. That's when they know it's the best time to strike. I mean, Mosai didn't make him a cunning hunter for nothing, right? You study hunting, and even looking at predation when it comes to even animals, you'll see the behaviors the animals do when they hunt the prey. You can get a lot of insight into our brother Esau, right? You just watch one of those nature shows that deal with it. You can parallel the activities of those apex predators, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, I've seen Esau do that one there. Only with him, he got bored with hunting animals, right? He still hunts animals, but now he says, let me hunt nations, let me hunt people, right? Let me get even better with it. Let me hunt their soul, their mind, right? That'll make my effort that much easier, right? Because if I can destroy their mind, it'll be that much easier to go in for the kill, because apex predators, yeah, they're built strong, but at the same time they want to conserve energy too, because they don't know, if a drought is coming. So that's why we'll see the nature shows. They might go after the weak, the stragglers or the children, the small babies that might be by the place where they're eating or drinking. You say, oh my God, how's he going after the little one? Because the predator knows, like, okay, this might be my last meal for a little while. I don't care. This isn't about a fair one, right? What do I need to do to survive? That means picking off one of the little ones, one of the weak ones. I'll do it. That's what we see with Esau with the with the so-called white supremacists. What do they do? They'll oftentimes will target the women and children. Cowards. And we'll say, look at this guy. He wouldn't come to a brother like that. When it comes to calling the cops or being a Karen or a Kevin and whatnot and stuff like that. Why are they gonna go after the weak of us? But once again, if you know the prophecy and know who the Most High made them to be, you can make the parallel, make the connection, and go, oh, okay, it is being who they are. That should be motivation for us to be who we're meant to be, right? To be Jacob as opposed to whatever they told us that we are. What was that? You told me you want to bring out?
Yeah, Ecclesiastes 7:7.
Ecclesiastes 7:7.
Yeah, Ecclesiastes 7:7. It says, surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. So we as Israelites, we know that we've been oppressed, and we get mad about it. But those who like don't know or certain things, they're like, oh, they're getting gifts and they're getting this and they're getting perks and all of that stuff. That's this is good, cool. I'm relaxed, I'm comfortable, and so on and so forth.
That's true. And keep in mind here too. I remember looking up in the Hebrew one time when it says mad here. I know oftentimes we'll bring it at camp and we'll be reading like silent mad. We'll say, "Sure, the oppression maketh a wise man mad." Read it again. Wise man mad. But this mad here is actually the word for like going out your mind. Like when it says in the Deuteronomy 28:28, you will be smitten with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. So it's really going into making you crazy. So that's the kind of mad we're talking about here, to be specific. But the other mad works too, even though it might be the Hebrew word, but that can work also. But I just want to mention that. But yeah, oppression will have you out your mind because you got all these games they play with us, right? Where they piss on us, tell us it's raining, right? And as they use the term so much now, right? That the gaslighting, right? You're not being abused. There's no white supremacy. Everything's fine. You've got all the same opportunities. Just pull yourself by your bootstraps. You're not being afflicted. Like telling you kind of half truths, right? And then you're trying to figure out why you're not getting the results when you do what everyone else is doing, right? And you're not given the same credit for your merit. But yeah, that can make you mad. But yeah, the second part definitely good too for what we just read too, as far as the gift destroying the heart, putting you at ease. And we see in the case of Mordecai and Esther, them being in higher position compared to other Jews, the gift didn't destroy their heart, right? They didn't fall for that, and their minds are on the welfare of the people, right? Not off of what they can get out of out of what they can get out of the Persian Empire and the Persian elite at the time, because Esther, she was a woman of lesser character. She could have very easily just been like, well, I'm glad, Uncle, you didn't tell me to tell him who I was. Let me just, blend in, right? Or they don't know that you and I are related, so maybe I can get away, right? Maybe I can escape. Maybe that deliverance will come from somewhere else. But I'll be fine, She could have went that route, but we see she didn't.
I mean, that also that's where see what she went seek counsel, right? At the time when she was not sure about what to do, right? She went and seek counsel to Mordecai, right? And Mordecai himself, he at times he need counsel too, because he in a distress situation. So who he seek to get counsel from? Consult with what he learned based on the scriptures, what he learned, growing up or learning the scriptures and what you actually think. Because you playing it's like it's that everyone we playing it's like we playing in a movie, and you can't be following somebody else's script. You gotta stick to the scriptures, the script that you're being given. Like Psalm 119 and 105, right? It says, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." So the minute that we confused, we don't know what's going on, we got to get back to the script. Get back to the script. Sometimes you can be following the script, without, based on what you learn and wisdom, but sometimes you just got to fall back, come back to the script, because at that point you stuck. That's the only way you can move forward. You can never, deviate from the script. But and other people have script. Like Satan has his own script for his people, and sometimes it looks similar to the script that you were following.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen, and you deviate from the script, you follow somebody else's script. That's when we get in trouble. But as long as we stay with the script that we're given in the scriptures, then that's how we keep moving along, or we're not off track. Stay on course.
Okay. Excellent point. Because so many of our people they made examples of, right? And the people in the world watch them, right? As far as, like you say, was it run, sing, dance, and play, right? They make it to the top, and they say, look, so-and-so made power moves. Look at that athlete. Look at that actor, that actress. They making power moves, right? Playing, like you said, their script, reading their lines. And then when Esau decides to, let a scandal get, exposed, our people will be the first ones on the chopping block. And they'll be like, well, I was going along to get along, right? He must have made friends, but show himself friendly, right? Take that proverb and twist it. I was trying to be friendly with these heathen. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Now I'm being busted for being a Roman, right? Everybody else was involved too, but now I'm the one left holding the bag, right? I thought I was a good old boy, right? I thought I was part of the good old boy network too. And they realized, you just the Negro in the big house. They got to sleep on the steps, You're Steven from Django. Who's a Samuel Jackson? You're Steven from Django. That's who you are, But you got comfortable living in the big house for too long. You thought, it was your house. But now it's time for you to, pay your dues. Take one for the team. And you're supposed to just take it, And you're like, oh man, I thought it was in there. But had they had a different road to ascension, the outcome could have been very different. If it was according to the scriptures. But this is how it works. Okay. So like I said before, we'll make an end here. We'll pick back up next time. We're going to be picking up the next readings in Esther, which is going to be in the Apocrypha as well, in Esdras. Keep saying Esdras. In Esther chapter 13, in verse 8 going down. But we'll list those scriptures too as we go through them and read the second half. So remember today, it's not a Sabbath, but still a day we remember. So you can still buy and sell and cook and things like that. But it's definitely a day you want to definitely revere and to remember and to consider and appreciate when it comes to the Most High and what He's done for you up to this point, no matter what hardships you may have suffered. And you want to be reminded of and consider the good that you can do and cause others as well, right? Which we'll touch on more of those details when we get into the lesson tomorrow night. We read the second half of the story. So I'll say Shar Chag Purim, Yawam Ah, which just means Happy Feast of Purim, day one. Hopefully everybody was edified by what we read so far. If this is your first time reading it, hopefully you're edified. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to write them down. We can go to them in more detail if there are questions at another time. But think the story reads pretty straightforward, but like I said, you still may have questions. Just note them as you go through this holy day, because it's not just okay, today we get together and do this. There's definitely a story behind this, and the whole story is significant to kind of seal the deal on what Purim is all about. So most times we'll see you guys this time tomorrow evening for the closing, a little bit earlier, of course, but uh, I'll say Prakate Hawa by Shemi Hawashad, I Roch HaKodash, and blessed be the Most High name of Christ by way of the Holy Spirit. Definitely enjoy the festivities, the feast, enjoy the feast night as we begin the first day of Purim. And with that, we'll do the closing prayers. So, Shalom Yasharala wa Laila Tuam. Barakati Hawa by Shemi Hawashai, Asharana Tananao, Pari Agapen Thwada Aman. La Hawa by Shemi Hawashai, Yasharala. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. At Magua, Panyua Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Babakushai, Shemad, Lanawa, Aita, Yemyan, Aita, Shalak, Ma'ika Allah, Wa Allahayim, Tazwadakim, La, Shema Al, Barak, Rapah, Magun, Wa Chazayak, Banya, Yasha'Allah, Wa Shalak, Lanawa, Rabian, Kakama, Rabian, Da'ait, Rabian, Bayana, Rabian, Sabalanwa, Rabian, Amawan, Rabiim, Aqua, Rabiim, Ahabiim, Rabiim, Haganah, Rochanaya, Wasalak, Ko, Tayamnawa, La Akim, Wa Akiwa, Wa Yasha'ala, Damyad, Wa Walam, Ba'asham, Yahawashai, the water, Aman. English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, please listen to us now. Right now, send Mike on the righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. Send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers, sisters in Israel, always and forever, in the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. Four Corners Prayer. Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Barak Nawa, Wayasha'Allah, Wabat Yasaparim, Shema, Yashirale, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, okay. English translation, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us in Israel in the house of books. And then we said, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Prayer for the food. Yahweh, Gadawo, Basham, Madawanya, Yahweh Shai, Babakushai, Barak, Mako, Yanawa, Shatayawath, Yanawa, Yayan, Yanawa, Lacham, Yanawa, Shakara, Yanawa, Zakat, Pawarium, Basham, Yahweh Shai, the water. Amen. All right, Shakak Pawarim Yasharala. Enjoy the feast. Most High will talk to everybody during the feast tomorrow evening for the second day. Laila Tuwa.